I'm wondering whether there's, you know, if we referred a client who comes with that diagnosis, perhaps maybe right away we have an anxiety about that as a practitioner, and whether there might be something that you might say, something you've thought about in the book that can really help ground us, or that we might take into the room that can help us to be more present with a client. Or, I mean, I know there's no quick fixes in terms of how we can then get into the relationship, but maybe something that you guys have found helpful in those therapeutic relationships.
I had an interesting experience with one of the clients that I'm seeing now, who has a trauma history, and it's some chaotic emotions, and I referred her for supplement DBT, partially for the DBT itself, and partially I thought maybe the added structure would be helpful. And when she called to make an appointment for DBT, the counselor on the phone said, "Do you have borderline personality disorder?" And my client said, "Well, not that I know of. My therapist didn't say that." And he said, "Well, you do. She was just being nice and didn't want to tell you." And then my client came back in and asked me about it. And I guess, so in telling that story, what I'm saying is that I don't really pay that much attention to the diagnosis that people give. In fact, when I used to work in the clinic, I never read the intakes before I saw the clients, because I felt like it was going to give me some kind of bias based on the perception of what someone else saw, and I wanted to see the person fresh. And so if I can usually tell, like, for example, when this particular person I'm talking about had called to set up the appointment, I could tell from some of the things in her history that it was probably going to be a difficult treatment. But I didn't turn her away because I also believed that I could help her. And the first year was very difficult, but she's doing a lot better. Not that we don't still have pockets of difficulty, but we do. So I guess if at all possible, I would try to look at each person as a unique human experience that you're going to share, and try to make your own assessment as much as possible. I mean, that's not to say that the difficult feelings aren't going to arise, and they'll probably be fairly immediate depending on the level of the person's distress, and then you can take that to supervision or peer support groups or things like that. But I think we have to I think one of the things that I always try to convey when I'm supervising is to not pay attention to the diagnosis, because it really, like Brent was saying before, it's a false taxonomy, like thrown onto a very complicated, we're all so complicated. How can you just put like 10 criteria and say someone has to meet 4 and they have this? I mean, we're talking about human behavior. So to try to just kind of stay with the person's experience and not pay so much attention to diagnosis. Like Brent said, I think there'd be a lot of therapists that would disagree with me, but I really believe that staying with the diagnosis creates a limitation that's almost impossible to undo if you stay close to that and you miss it. I don't know. Maybe Brent has something to add, but.
Well, yeah, I was thinking a question about what you take into the room and how to be with someone. A few quick things I was thinking are that psychiatric labels are totally unnecessary, I think, and I suspect that in the future we'll find psychiatry and psychiatric labels being relegated to the realm of other failed scientific projects like phrenology was. However, I think that some people, I do know some people that organize themselves well around a psychiatric label. It becomes a metaphor for them. So some people really seem to attach to a label, and it helps them organize. It becomes a kind of image or guiding metaphor. That's not many people. The vast majority of time, I find them unhelpful and frankly inaccurate and loaded with a lot of philosophical presuppositions. But in terms of how to be with someone, Jackie's right on point. Is the question isn't like what I think is best for them. The question is what's best for them. So sometimes I dare say, and we mention it in the book, psychotherapy is not the most effective modality for everyone. For some people, it's a little bit of psychotherapy and some nutritional stuff. For some people, it's body work and a little psychotherapy. Sometimes it's no psychotherapy and becoming a part of a community that seems to, and the combination of these things is endless. The bottom line is, what really works for the individual. And so one of the things I do is just to try and be in a place where I can help kind of coach the client along to what works best for you as an individual, because psychotherapy might work brilliantly for one person, less well for another person, and some people it's not a great modality. There's no one size fits all thing with it.
Yeah, I think this.
And that's why in the back of the book we put a whole resource guide for all of the different modalities, or as many as I could get a hold of, or we could get a hold of, to say here's a whole group of things that you can figure out your own plan, and here are all the different kinds of services and things that are available, most of which are not like medication oriented at all. I've seen animals as natural therapy. Some people get back to nature and that really speaks to them. So there's no single formula that helps people work through these things.
Yeah.